All right, good evening, everyone. Come on into the room. Good evening, good evening. Got a couple of folks still joining. I'm going to give people just a minute or two. We'll go ahead and get started. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Heminger. I'm the president of the NAACP Arlington Branch and also a housing commissioner here in Arlington County. We're so grateful that so many of you have joined us this evening. I want to start by thanking our sponsors for their efforts organizing tonight's events. Thank you to the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, Arlington County Government, and the NAACP. Tonight's discussion is the first of many more to come. We'll learn about the disparities that exist in Black and Brown residents. We'll learn about some of those disparities in our schools, what some of those barriers are towards attaining homeownership, and so much more. We'll begin to start to scratch the surface on why some of our neighborhoods are more segregated today than they were 10 years ago. So like many of you, we've been waiting for years for this report to come out. We have a lot of ground to cover in very limited time, so we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We'll try our best to get to all of your questions, but if you put your questions in the chat, we will make sure that our experts on our panel can provide a response to you via public communication later on. So let's keep the conversation going after tonight. Tonight is really just a kickoff. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to the moderator for this evening, Kellen McBeth. Kellen currently serves as the chair of the Housing Commission in Arlington County, and he spent countless hours studying this issue and its effect. So good evening, Kellen, and thank you for moderating tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we are going to kick it off with our panelists from COG and Arlington County with their presentation on the Regional Fair Housing Plan. So Brian, if you're able to pull that up, we can get started.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Hilary Chapman. I'm with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and I am thrilled to be here with you this evening. I also want to say special thanks to the NAACP Arlington Branch for hosting this forum and for supporting it throughout through our Community Advisory Committee. And a special thanks. I'm thrilled to be here with my partners from Arlington County Government, as well as our lead consultant, Diane Glauber, who you'll hear from, who's also here with us from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law and is the author of this really significant planning document. So I want to get right to, I'm going to go through some of the basics here real quickly so that we can get to the meat of the matter, which is our draft goals and strategies, which is what we're proposing here to address some of these longstanding issues that we're facing here. But I want to just start with a real quick brief discussion about what the Fair Housing Plan is. It's a document that some of you may know. It typically covers 5 years, and it's designed to develop meaningful actions to overcome historic patterns of segregation, promote fair housing choice, and foster inclusive communities free from discrimination. And then once this plan is fully approved by the local governments and HUD, it will guide local investment decisions of federal funds to achieve the goals outlined in this plan. So I want to just, as a reminder, why fair housing. We can go ahead and skip. We can, we'll go over it. We need to go. That's perfect. Thank you. So, I would just say that why are we doing this? It's not just because HUD suggests that we should. It's important. Fair housing choice connects you to high-performing schools, transit, employment centers, healthy neighborhoods, and diverse communities. Whereas without fair housing choice, we have neighborhoods that are segregated. We have longer commutes, negative impacts on quality of life, on our environment, on our transportation system, exposures to environmental hazards. Like we're hearing a lot about Ohio and Palestine today. So all of these things matter. So we can go to the next slide. So who is doing this plan together? This has been, we have 8 local governments from Northern Virginia, 5 from Northern Virginia, the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, and the city of Gaithersburg, along with our public housing authority partners. HUD, Fair Housing, Office of Fair Housing, Equal Opportunity has been a partner with us, providing technical assistance to the team. We have, you'll see our consultants here, fantastic, best in class, world quality team from the Lawyers Committee, Urban Institute, and ACHOA Urban Collaborative. The Urban Institute was the lead for the data collection, ACHOA Urban Collaborative on the community engagement piece, and Lawyers Committees, and synthesizing all of that and putting it into our plan document. So next slide, please. Also, of course, very important, our Community Advisory Committee members. So a bridge to the people who are most impacted by fair housing choice. And obviously NAACP has been a key partner in that. These groups all represent regionally working organizations, and their role has been to provide input to the local governments as well throughout. So next slide, please. So this plan has been it has been a long journey to get to this point in the process. 25 years ago was the last time the region came together to attempt an effort of this complexity and length. We began the process way actually back in 2017, before the Trump administration paused the affirmatively fair housing rule. There were 3 key parts in the planning process around data collection, community engagement, and plan synthesis and development. We're now in the obviously the public release phase, so we're hoping to get input on what we've proposed, and then we're planning to wrap up by this summer. Next slide, please. So, as I said, this has been a multi-year process. The plan is very data driven. There's a lot of information in it. I'm just going to hit a few highlights to just help us frame why the strategies we propose for the region and for Arlington County, where they came from. So this is probably familiar to some of you. You'll see some of the demographic data. It's interesting to note here for Arlington County that relative to the region, it has a much lower percentage of people who are Black or African American, and a higher percentage of those who are non-Hispanic white. And this is, of course, has shifted since 1990. Next slide, please. Also, another quick snippet of demographic data, Spanish, most prevalently spoken for people with limited English proficiency. But that population of people who speak Spanish as a first language has declined between 2015 and 2019. And the most common residents who are non-US born in Arlington County from El Salvador. Next slide, please. So just a quick two more, I promise, not too many more slides. On the data side, one thing we want to talk about is sort of if poverty rates through in Arlington County. Here's a sort of the quick definitions here before you look at the actual map itself. So darker areas have higher shares of persons in poverty, and we'll just switch to the next slide. And you can see where this is. So northwestern and eastern parts, generally lower rates of poverty than in the southwestern and western parts of the county. Next slide, please. So again, among the many data points we looked at for this plan is looking at such sort of median rent. And excuse me. Median, of course, again, as a reminder, is just the middle range of that rent, with darker areas represented on the map as those that are more expensive. So next slide, please. So these are the areas you can see in the darker areas that have much higher median rents, and almost 40% of tracts have median rents of $2,000 a month or more. So very, very high, as you are, I'm sure, already aware. So this will be my last comment here before handing it over to Joel Franklin from Arlington County. But I just wanted to, before we dive into the strategy, so based on the information we gathered, we worked to come up with 7 goals and strategies that apply to all 8 governments. They're all joining together and say we will work on these things together. They are data-driven and built upon an extensive, not just data collection, but a community engagement process as well. These are shared goals, but they are implemented locally, and some jurisdictions have some additional goals as well, and you'll hear about those in just a moment. This is about quality, not quantity. So fewer goals, more impactful, rather than a laundry list of things that we should all be doing together. So that was the rationale behind the smaller number of goals. And with that, I will hand it over to Joel Franklin. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Hilary, and thank you for having me tonight and allowing me to present on these draft goals and strategies that not only apply to the region, but more specifically, some of them are more targeted to Arlington. So the first goal, which applies to Arlington as well as its neighborhood jurisdiction, is increase the supply of housing that is affordable to families with incomes 60% of the area median income or below in the region, particularly in areas that have historically lacked such housing. Some of the strategies that we are all committed to working on together are listed here. So firstly, lower the income targeting of housing affordable to people with incomes of 80%. Vary median income to 60% and below in order to address the chronic housing shortage for low-income individuals and families. Secondly, provide low-interest loans to single-family homeowners and grants to homeowners with households' incomes up to 80% of area median income to develop accessory dwelling units with affordability restrictions on their property. And lastly, use local government financing and regulatory tools such as bonds, real estate transfer taxes, inclusionary housing, as of right accessory dwelling units, public land set-asides for affordable housing, expedited permit, and relaxation of parking requirements for affordable housing developments. So next slide. So in addition to the strategies shared previously, Arlington County has committed to take additional actions that work towards the shared goal. The first recommendation is to continue to encourage developers to exceed the required number of affordable accessible units in a range of sizes and types when new development occurs. So demand for affordable accessible housing often exceeds supply Persons with disabilities are more likely to live below the poverty line than persons without disabilities. It is therefore recommended that Arlington continues to support this and encourage this development. Second is deepen affordability of affordable housing. So the data that we saw really shed light on the need to better match our affordable housing efforts to the needs of the communities. As such, we'll be looking for every opportunity to provide deeper affordability to meet the needs of households with incomes under 40% of the area median income. This could include providing incentives for the inclusion of extremely affordable housing units in projects funded by the county. When projects seek to come in for refinancing to the county, incorporate some adjustments to the affordability covenants that are in place. And lastly, with that, engage with owners of existing affordable units to explore collaborative approaches to increase the share of units dedicated to lower affordability levels. Next on this one is explore, don't go on yet, back to the next slide, previous slide, thank you. So explore mechanisms to reduce county fees and related infrastructure costs for 100% affordable developments, provide incentives for low interest loans for accessory dwellings. And lastly, on this one, we're undertaking a new homeownership study that would take a step back from our homeownership programs to develop clear goals for our approach to homeownership and to rethink how best to achieve these defined outcomes. The homeownership program should serve as a continuum of program delivery intended to educate, guide, and assist moderate income Arlingtonians along the path to sustain homeownership and help the county meet its equity goals. Next slide. So the second goal is to reform zoning and land use policies to expand access to fair housing choice by increasing the development, geographic distribution, and supply of affordable housing. The first strategy is to increase inclusionary zoning incentives for creating on-site affordable housing and increase fees in lieu of providing on-site affordable housing. Next is to adopt affordable housing overlay zones to increase the amount of land where developments that meet robust affordability criteria are allowed as of right. Lastly, on the slide, incorporate a fair housing equity analysis into the review of significant rezoning proposals and specific plans. Next slide. For Arlington specific, on this one, consider new land use and housing policies to expand the supply of missing middle housing in forms limited or non-existent in Arlington's current housing stock. As you're probably aware, the county board has authorized public hearings in March on proposed zoning ordinance and general land use plan amendments relating to the missing middle housing study. Likewise, the planning commission will hold a public hearing on the amendments and make recommendations forward in early March. The county board will hold its public hearing and consideration during its regular March meeting. Also looking at initiating a zoning study to examine alternatives to the current definition of family in the zoning ordinance. So this is in response to changing composition of families and households. The county will consider changes to the zoning ordinance to allow for a broader definition of family and household for occupancy purposes. These changes will allow for non-traditional families, extended families, and unrelated individuals to live together to reduce their housing costs and in some cases, more efficiently access service. Also, the data showed that a high percentage of older adults are cost burdened and highlights the increasing need for housing affordability for older households. While older adults are welcome in all committed affordable housing, developments targeted specifically to seniors could focus greater attention on their needs. Recommendation is to initiate a zoning study to examine how an affordability requirement could be structured within the Arlington County zoning ordinance for senior housing projects approved via site plan. The focus will be on meeting the affordability requirement through on-site units, beds, as this may be the best way to ensure that low-income seniors benefits. Next slide. So goal 3 is implement preservation policies designed to preserve affordable housing and prevent displacement with a goal of no net loss of existing affordable units. The regional strategy that relates to Arlington is to track affordable housing developments with expiring subsidy contracts. Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, if you're not speaking and Joel should be the only one speaking, please mute yourself.
Thank you, Kellen. So this is really to track affordable housing developments with expiring subsidy contracts and adopt a proactive outreach program and prioritize resources for the preservation of that housing. So next slide. Specific to Arlington, we are going to periodically reevaluate the real estate tax relief program targeted to seniors and disabled homeowners in regards to deferrals versus exemptions, assets, and income limits, so that we can preserve home ownership for the most vulnerable. Second on this one, explore reopening the housing choice voucher primary waiting list in order to solicit new income eligible households seeking rental subsidy supports. This federal subsidy is targeted to low income and extremely low income households through a deep rental subsidy. Third, develop a proposal for the review of the housing grant program eligibility and maximum allowable rents. So we're looking at conducting an evaluative review of the housing grants program to identify the program's effectiveness in meeting the housing needs of extremely low income households and to develop possible program adjustments. And fourth, consider developing a program to provide financial and technical support to low and moderate income homeowners for small repairs, estate planning, taxes, aging in place, and emergency relief. Next slide. So goal 4 is to increase the number of homeowners in the region and reduce inequities and discriminatory practices that limit homeownership opportunities by members of protected classes. Regional strategies include increased homeownership opportunities for low and moderate income members of protected classes by ensuring affordable housing set-asides and new developments offer homeownership as well as rental, supporting first-time homebuyers by expanding financial literacy programs and homebuyer education, and using innovative homeownership models such as cooperatives and community land trusts. Secondly, is to support current homeowners with protective characteristics, including racial and ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, and seniors through increasing funding for repair, rehabilitation, and renovation programs and products, expanding programs that provide energy efficient improvements to lower utility costs, and providing comprehensive foreclosure prevention, counseling, and legal referrals. Next slide. Goal 5 is protect the housing rights of individuals and strengthen fair housing education. So regional strategies include reducing barriers to accessing rental housing by eliminating application fees for voucher holders and encouraging landlords to follow HUD's guidelines on the use of criminal backgrounds in screening tenants. Second, pilot a right to counsel program to ensure legal representation for tenants and landlord-tenant proceedings. And lastly, expand and increase support for fair housing outreach, education, and enforcement. Next slide. So specific to Arlington, we want to test for housing discrimination based on disability status for one of the fair housing tests upcoming in the next 5 years, as well as continued tests for housing discrimination based on race and national origin. Testing is really a method to determine whether or not a home seeker is treated differently in their search for housing. Secondly, provide education and outreach to potential first-time homebuyers about fair housing law, using HUD-certified trainers, homebuyer education credit, repair education, and expanding marketing to first-generation potential homebuyers to be sure they're aware of programs and funding for which they may be eligible for, including information in commonly spoken languages. Third is make the fair housing provisions in the Arlington County's Human Rights Ordinance consistent with the Fair Housing Act and Virginia's Fair Housing Law, including adding source of income as a protected class and explore becoming a substantially equivalent fair housing assistance partner with Department of Housing and Urban Development. And lastly, reduce language barriers when seeking housing services, ensuring that marketing materials for county-funded programs about available affordable units are available in specific languages based on consumer needs. Increase collaboration with partners to facilitate education of residents in the most prevalent non-English languages. Next slide, please. So goal 6 is to increase community integration and reduce housing barriers for persons with disabilities. So this includes prioritize home and CDBG funds for developments that include permanent supportive housing units, advocating for public housing authorities to adopt admission preferences, and advocating for new multifamily development when public funds have at least 10% of total units accessible for persons with mobility disabilities and at least 4% accessible for persons with hearing or visual disabilities. Next slide. And for Arlington, we want to ensure that all accessible units in future committed affordable housing developments provide the same features as standard units. Accessible units should not be qualitatively different from standard units in the same building. Any in-unit amenity provided to tenants, such as in-unit laundry, shall be provided in accessible units, and these amenities shall also comply with accessibility standards. Secondly, develop a rental accessibility modification program and identify funding to provide technical assistance and grants to assist low and moderate income renters with physical or sensory disabilities to complete accessible modifications in their home. And last, explore the possibility of entering into a memorandum of agreement with the state's Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services to administer the state rental assistance program in Arlington. This program is designed to provide rental assistance to single-person families with developmental disabilities, so they have the means to lease private market rental housing that meets their needs. Accessing the state resource will help reduce costs to local programs. Next slide. So goal 7 is expand access and affordability of public transportation for members of the protected classes. Strategies include providing free bus transportation to low-income households and to study and make recommendations to improve and expand bus routes across borders to ensure that members of the protected class can access job and employment centers. Next slide, please. And an initial Arlington goal is to increase effectiveness of existing programs to further fair housing. This includes the review of current metrics for goals and implement an equity analysis with metrics across program areas and develop a plan and mechanisms for collecting reliable demographic data on residents of committed affordable housing. The county does not currently have a reliable mechanism for collecting demographic information on residents of committed affordable housing beyond household income. So in order to really better understand who is being served by committed affordable housing, the county will need to engage with owners of this committed affordable housing, develop an effective mechanism for collecting demographic data on these residents, including age, race, ethnicity, household size. So this information is essential to evaluate the county's affordable housing efforts using an equity lens. And finally, existing affordable housing investment fund policy does affirmly further fair housing choice by having the goal of not further concentrating low and moderate income households. The current funding criteria for investment includes a geographic distribution category. However, given Arlington's low poverty rate, there are no racially or ethnically concentrated areas of poverty as defined by HUD, but we could potentially overlook areas in need. So the county is looking at modifying the definition that HUD provides us to look at lower rates of non-white population in those census tract, as well as looking at a reduced poverty rate to see where those potentially modifications could occur, and then add that to a financial policy when the new committed affordable projects are considered. So that ends the draft goals and strategies, and then we'll turn it back over to Hilary to close out the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. It's really impressive list of goals and strategies that Arlington is proposing to take on. And I just wanted to leave you with a couple of key points before we can get to having a discussion. I'm also hearing a fair amount of background noise. So yes, thank you if you could mute yourself. So I just wanted to say a couple really quick things. One, this is a plan with not just an impact and relevance for Arlington County, but is relevant to all of metropolitan Washington, the region, and has and to the nation. This is as we evolve, the decisions that are made here will ripple out and can inform other parts of the country which are considering regional collaborations. And more importantly, too, this coordinated regional action is not just designed to sort of make us all feel better by working together. It's designed to improve local outcomes, right? This is very challenging. No one jurisdiction can solve this problem on their own, but working together collaboratively, hopefully we can deepen the impact of our plans. And then last, of course, we would really appreciate your help in sharing the opportunity to weigh in and provide your input on our proposed actions. And there's a website here below you. Go to the next slide. And in terms of next steps, what's coming up, obviously we have our public comment period, which is open through the end of March. There's another opportunity to weigh in Arlington County on March 8th at the Arlington Arlington Tenant Landlord Commission, which I believe is at 7 p.m. After the public comment period ends, we'll revise those plans, and then they will go through a legislative and administrative approval process. The Arlington board will take action on this plan, as well as 5 other local governments as well. And once we're complete with that, we will finalize any comments to the plan itself and submit to HUD by the end of this summer. So, and there again, here's our webpage with resources, including flyers that we would encourage you to share with your neighbors, and also resources on the Arlington County webpage itself, or if you have any questions specifically, Joel is your expert and is able to address any Arlington County specific questions. So, and with that, I'd like to just thank you again. Our contact information is here. Unfortunately, formatting looks a little funky here. So, but I believe there's a PDF here that can be shared afterwards if you are interested in referring to the information afterwards.
Thank you, Hilary. And thank you, Joel, for that presentation. So now we're going to start our question and answer. So I have a number of questions prepared for our panelists. So if we could bring Joel up here and Diane as well, at least to spotlight them, that would be great. There's Joel. So I do also want to thank, besides just being here tonight and speaking with the NAACP, all the hard work that went into this. This is, as Hilary said, multi-year effort, and appreciate on the Arlington County side as well the willingness to accept feedback, especially when it was quite critical from the NAACP and from other groups over the last few years about how to make our fair housing plan and goals better. And it's been really rewarding to be part of the community advisory process and the advocacy efforts around the development of this plan and see things that were brought up in those meetings and discussions, focus groups, and interviews make it into the draft plan that we have before us today. So I'm very appreciative of all the work of the consultants, of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, of Arlington County staff, and all those involved in this effort. So I wanted to start off with a question that didn't really come up in the presentation, but a question about schools. So in the Regional Fair Housing Report, it states that there's significant gaps in access to high-performing schools. So this is based on state reading and math exams among Black and Hispanic students and their peers. What will the county do to address these disparities in access, and how will it work with Arlington Public Schools to ensure Black and Hispanic students have the same access to a quality education as their white and Asian peers?
Great, thanks for that question, Colin. So Arlington County and Arlington Public Schools staff have collaborated in the Regional Government Alliance on Race and Equity Training Program and continue to work together to ensure that a racial equity lens is used in all of our work. So both agencies have developed robust data dashboards to track information in a variety of areas, from student outcomes to neighborhood demographics, and will really use this information to inform policy setting. We do know that stable housing is a key component, a determinant in school success. In addition to actual neighborhood or school attendant, so the county's support of affordable housing, both through the development of units and rent subsidies, is one way to reduce disparities in academic achievement. So Arlington Public Schools may be working to address disparities between schools, but a lot of school access has to do with one's home address. And we know that, artificial barriers were put in place in terms of who can live where, with the advent of the, zoning regulations that were adopted in Arlington some 90 years ago. So staff will really need to continue to look at this issue far beyond the ongoing missing middle discussion.
Thank you, Joel. So my next question is around a topic that did come up as part of the Arlington County goals, as well as the regional ones. So that's around fair housing testing. So Arlington has not conducted fair housing testing since 2019. And there's a clear need for more frequent testing, and testing on more than just race and national origin, as Arlington has in the past. And this was part of the feedback that we saw from the community as part of the outreach and engagement efforts for the plan. Why do Arlington's goals and strategies only focus on adding disability testing and not other protected classes? And why is the goal to complete it sometime in the next 5 years and not sooner?
Sure. So unfortunately, Arlington has limited resources right now for testing and enforcement, with currently only one investigator on staff and a limited contract for the testing that you're talking about, and that's recommended in the plan. The recommendation is to prioritize disability testing because through numerous engagement opportunities, we understood that this is definitely an area of concern with the community. But the recommendation also supports the continued testing on race and national origin.
Thank you, Joel. My next question is more sort of focused on the regional perspective. So when looking at affordable housing for historically disadvantaged groups, are there particularly successful things that other jurisdictions outside of Arlington are doing in the region that could serve as potential models for Arlington to consider? So curious if Hilary or Diane or even Joel, have a perspective on that.
Well, I think the plan reflects sort of best practices in the region as well as outside the region. For example, DC has a very vibrant inclusionary housing policy, mandatory inclusionary housing that they want to expand to downtown, where there are plenty of unused offices, including in my building. So I think DC has shown a real commitment, and there's some great housing development policies out of Montgomery County, for example, that we are bringing into this, a regional focus. We've also taken best practices from around the country, such as right to counsel, which has proven effective in, New York and Philadelphia, and it's now being implemented in LA to bear on this plan. So it's a combination of what the best practices of the region as well as the entire country. In fact, one of the we mentioned the having an equity lens in looking at development and redevelopment, and that's right out of the city of Boston, who's implemented that.
Thank you, Diane. My next question is around housing discrimination. So the Regional Fair Housing Survey found that 13% of respondents reported facing housing discrimination, and an additional 9% reported knowing someone who had faced housing discrimination. 75% of those who reported facing housing discrimination said they did not report it. Which of Arlington's goals and strategies is likely to combat the continuing housing discrimination found in our community?
Sure. So
yeah, I just want to make, you're specific to the Arlington goals versus the regional goals. Okay.
Yes. I mean, if there's something in the regional goals too that addresses that, but basically the question is, what is Arlington going to do to address that? That's the main thrust of the question.
Sure, I can start, and if Diane has anything to add, she can jump in. So as the recommendations include a lot of education. So Arlington continues to educate residents and landlords on their rights and responsibilities through outreach. This includes workshops and materials. One current effort is to work with landlords to educate them on the 2021 state legislation that outlawed discrimination against potential renters based on sources of income, as well as to provide tools, help them manage the administrative process of that. So a lot of the recommendations revolve around education, and that's where we're looking at doing some of that work.
And just to add, I would say every goal we developed as part of the regional plan is designed to reduce segregation and increase integration. So the strategies that follow are really focused on making sure that everyone has opportunities to live in different neighborhoods. And I think, Kellen, you've been part of the discussion. And I think, by targeting lower income people as well and protected classes, we believe that this will go a long way towards that goal.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Joel. So my next question is really about retaliation. So this again came from some of the community engagement feedback from this process. So the regional fair housing focus groups with Spanish-speaking residents revealed, and I quote, "fear of reprisal as a major issue in reporting housing discrimination or substandard housing conditions." And this is also something that the NAACP, the Housing Commission, and I think the Tenant Landlord Commission have heard from residents, that they're afraid of retaliation, and that hampers their ability to report issues or negative conditions that they're facing. So what can Arlington do to ensure that retaliation against tenants does not occur in our community and residents are not too afraid to speak out about fair housing violations or poor living conditions?
Sure, I can start, and if Diane has anything to add from the regional perspective. So the county obviously takes reports of retaliation very seriously, and there are several avenues to report on those fair housing violations or poor living conditions. So depending on the issue, this may include code enforcement, the county's Human Rights Office, the State Fair Housing Office, or the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So it's really critical that we continue to educate tenants and landlords on these avenues through workshops, and are focusing intensely on this issue through the recently 2022 CAF strategies, or Community Affordable Strategy recommendations, that really are including some recommendations on more systematic changes to county collaboration and coordination. So for example, county departments involved in housing issues are meeting quarterly to discuss specific issues, as well as ways to better coordinate and ensure that constituent issues are addressed holistically.
And I would add, we really see retaliation when it comes to code enforcement. And many jurisdictions don't do code enforcement regularly, yet they rely on tenants to report code violations, which really can be problematic. So having regular inspections can help ameliorate some of the retaliation we've seen around the country.
Thank you, Diane. It looks like Jennifer Daniels, also with Arlington County, has a response to that.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks for letting me chime in. As Joel said, we really do care about retaliation, and we've been, as part of the CAF strategies report that Joel mentioned, we were doing a lot of community conversations around how to become more resident focused and how to support residents if they don't feel comfortable going to their property manager, or they don't feel comfortable going to code enforcement. So we're doing a lot more work with property managers directly. We're trying to create systems, as Joel said, where we coordinate internally as a county so things don't fall between the cracks. We do have a line that people can call directly. It's our Housing Information Center, where we have bilingual staff who can provide information on potential resources, make potential referrals, whether it's a code enforcement issue or a human rights issue, or if people are looking for a subsidy or whatever, so we can help refer to that. And so we're really working on having staff who staff those lines, have customer service training, making sure that we can really help people to feel comfortable to reach out to us, because what we're hearing and we understand is that sometimes people might not feel comfortable reaching out to their government agency. So we're trying to, in as many ways as possible, give people those avenues to reach out.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I have one more question before we open it up to the attendees for broader Q&A. And so this one is, again, sort of a regional focus question. So I know, we heard at the beginning from President Heminger that the segregation within the whole region has increased from 2010 to the present. So that's something that I find very concerning, but I'm curious from your all perspective, what are the regional fair housing trends that you found most discouraging, and what trends did you find more reason to be hopeful from this effort?
Do you want me to go? Yeah, you want to chime in? I can.
You go ahead and I'll chime in.
Yeah, sure. No, either way is fine. So I think this is just my own personal perspective. I think what's the other thing that's discouraging is just simply how persistent and challenging it is to continue to see these trends and be able to bend the needle to reverse historic patterns of segregation. So I would say that's not necessarily a new trend, but it's a thing that I find that worries me, it concerns me, I guess, the most. But I think there are reasons to be hopeful. And this is, I think, for me, this collaboration with these 8 local governments is number one in terms of having a reason to be hopeful that these governments are really working together in a new and very meaningful way. It gives me a lot of hope. There's also HUD has just recently issued a new affirmatively furthering fair housing rule, and I think that's another reason to be hopeful and another opportunity for folks to weigh in and share what the future of furthering fair housing looks like. That's my 2 cents. I don't. Diane probably has, but more.
Well, no, I agree with you, and I think it's a really big deal that we were able to get all the 8 jurisdictions together to make a commitment to help address segregation from everywhere from DC, of course, to Prince William County. So I'm hopeful and that collectively we can begin to address these issues that have been very long standing. This is nothing new, but I feel like there's a universal commitment to meeting the goals of the plan.
Thank you, Diane. Joel or Jennifer, anything that you wanted to add to that?
Nothing here. No.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to open up questions for audience members. I know we have some in the chat, and I'll start with those. Everyone is welcome to add questions to the chat that I can read to our panelists. But you're also welcome to raise your hand and I can call on you to ask your own question if you would like. So I guess we'll start with a question from Dan Creedon, who I think he reposted his question from earlier. This is kind of a long one, but the Regional Fair Housing Plan is about local governments taking meaningful actions to overcome historic patterns of segregation, promote fair housing choice, and foster inclusive communities that are free from discrimination. Slide 17 includes a goal specific to Arlington to use the missing middle housing study to consider new land use and housing policies to expand the supply of and types of housing in forms that are limited or non-existent in Arlington's current housing stock. But the plan, especially without 7 and 8-plex units, is not attainable for low, moderate, or even middle income residents. Updated analysis of what it would cost to buy a $670,000 unit in a sixplex shows that a household income of $174,000 is needed. That is upper income. So this does not seem to be a meaningful action to achieve fair housing. Shouldn't Arlington be focused on low, moderate, and middle income residents?
So yeah, I can start with that. And we also have Richard Tucker here from our Housing Arlington lead, if he has anything else to add. But yes, we are very focused on low and moderate income housing. We have a affordable housing and investment fund that we loan out to nonprofit developers to develop low-income housing, and that's one way. And then through the Housing Arlington initiative, the county is looking for different innovative ways to address the county's housing shortage and the need for more affordable housing. And if Richard, do you want to add some of those initiatives that we're looking at?
Well, I want to come back to the missing middle study. I want to just clarify that the missing middle study is what was initiated as an exploration of what could be achieved by expanding housing options or the types of housing that could be built in what had been our traditional single family neighborhoods. So that exploration led to through analysis and understanding about housing, what potential housing costs and so forth. So it does not lead in and of itself to the provision of affordable housing, but there can be follow-up efforts beyond the zoning effort to achieve affordability through missing middle. So all is not lost. That so that process is going to play out. Hopefully next month the board will take some action and we'll understand better what housing options will be available in Arlington, but there can be some follow-on beyond that. And then, as Joel was indicating, through Housing Arlington, we're doing a plethora of things to try to achieve more affordable housing, more housing options in Arlington, including other zoning studies that we've completed and others that we will be working on, partnerships with nonprofits and houses of worship to develop affordable housing, and a whole host of other things, including working to develop housing or housing options for employees. So there's a lot of things that we're working on. Missing middle is not the solution to all things, but it's an important thing that we're working on, and hopefully we'll get that achieved in the near future.
Thank you, Richard. Jennifer, you had a response as well?
I do. I just wanted to chime in that a fun fact about fair housing is a protected class is actually not related to income. So when you're looking at fair housing from the sort of legal standpoint, you're looking at people not being discriminated against or not having housing issues based on race, national origin, color, marital status, sex, gender identity, religion, age, disability, sexual orientation, familial status. And then there's some other ones that the state has added. So while it's important to, am I on mute now? So, I mean, while obviously a lot of the work we do, income becomes sort of a proxy for a lot of those characteristics, that really has not been the focus of the Fair Housing Plan. We really are looking at how those protected classes are impacted in ways that we can help support them.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think a sort of a good example of that too is in the plan where they talk about I think appraisal bias as well as lender discrimination. So there's wealthy people of color who get discriminated against when selling or trying to purchase a home because of discrimination in the housing industrial complex, essentially. And that's just as important to make sure that wealthy people are not being discriminated against based on the color of their skin or their race or ethnic identity. So yeah, I think that's an important point to keep in mind as well. So the next question, I think I saw one from Kathleen McSweeney. Under the category of no net loss of existing affordable units, what are the tools the county has or is exploring to ensure that older expiring CAFs, such as those at historic Ballston Park on North Glebe, are not raised for luxury apartment redevelopment?
I mean, I think our biggest tool for preservation has been and continues to be our Affordable Housing Investment Fund. And our perfect example of that is our recent acquisition of the Barcroft Apartments along Columbia Pike. And I can also turn it over to Richard Tucker if there's any additional Housing Arlington initiatives that are going on to help preserve some of the affordable housing.
No, I think you covered it, and Jennifer Daniels in the chat did respond, and we do monitor the affordability periods on projects. So both Barcroft Apartments is a good example of us coming in at the nick of time to ensure and extend affordability on a site when property is up for sale. So and in most cases, those committed affordable units are in many cases are owned by our nonprofit partners whose mission is to provide affordable housing. So they are actively working with us as those properties, as the affordability period is coming to an end, to extend that beyond that point. So there are some occasions where there are private developments where we do have to actually work with the property owner, but most of the time with our nonprofit partners, we're working hand in hand to extend that affordability period anyway.
Thank you very much. So next question I see is from Mark Nadell. And Mark said, if the county does not have sufficient funding to meet all of the goals indicated, is anyone trying to attach a ballpark price to each one and determine priorities on which ones to attempt first?
So in the plan, we did include a kind of a strategy of working through these, at least a timeline. And so that's kind of our first initial stab at attacking these goals and strategies. And I think, a lot of them are actually underway. This plan has taken a number of years, and we haven't necessarily waited for the plan to be finished to start on some of these efforts. So for example, the home ownership study, looking at that has already been underway. Obviously, the missing middle housing study is underway. So there's a number of recommendations that have been in here that we're working on. But we do know that affordable housing development is costly, and so we are also proposing to take a look at additional funding strategies that could be out there. So we are looking at a report on potential financial tools to help with that, besides just using the AF funding costs.
If I could just follow up on that, is there a chart that shows prices? And I know kind of exact, but is it tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands or tens of millions? I mean, some of these can be done in chunks, but are much more expensive. And so when we're trying to set priorities of what we can afford, can we take, 2 units of this one and 1 unit of that one? Is there a price list, like a menu, that you guys have tried to create that would, help?
As far as tackling the goals and strategies, we have not. I mean, it's some of them are, it's a staffing allocation. So some of it is, bringing up some staff time to work on some of these, like the education, enforcement, and some of them, for example, creating more committed affordable units. Some of our CAF projects cost between $85,000 to $112,000 per unit. So we factor that into what the need is, and try and kind of estimate that out to try and figure out what we can reasonably achieve. So I don't know if anybody else on county staff has anything to add to that.
Thank you, Joel. So it looks like the next question, continuing on the theme of how this is paid for, Cindy Nelson asks, who pays for these housing subsidies that were mentioned tonight? Is this through taxes? Our taxes and assessments are increasing dramatically, which are beyond area salary increases. Why are we picking up the tab on these expenses?
So sure, some of the funding is through the federal government. For example, the Housing Choice Voucher Program is federal funded. We get money through the Housing and Urban Development, which is also federal funding, Community Development Block Grant, as well as the Home Investment Partnership, which we use to put some money into our Affordable Housing Investment Fund. And we do use local tax dollars for the Affordable Housing Investment Fund, but the great thing about that is it is a revolving loan fund. So eventually the proceeds will come back to us or be reinvested in future affordable housing deals.
Thank you, Joel. Other questions from audience members at the moment? I know I have a couple other questions. I'm happy to ask those while we see if other people do. Oh, here we go from Kathleen McSweeney. Historically, some landlords have discriminated against people who have housing choice grants. Is there now legislation in Arlington that requires landlords to take them?
So the source of income protection passed through the Virginia legislature. So that is in effect in Arlington. So the answer is yes.
And Joel, I know and it was mentioned in the goals, but the county is also working on revising their human rights ordinance to match and sync with the state law, so that Arlington enforcement of fair housing law also includes a source of income or source of funds, which would mean that the county would actively enforce that as well, instead of just the state. We have a question from ECNV. Go ahead. And you are on mute.
Okay, I was unmuting, I'm sorry. This is Doris Ray and from Independent Center, Northern Virginia, and a member of the Disability Advisory Commission. And I am wondering about two complications that may arise in being able to reach some of the goals with regard to increasing the stock of accessible housing, which is keeping people with disabilities in nursing homes and not allowing them to exercise their ADA right under the Olmstead decision of the United States Supreme Court to live in the most integrated setting. So two things about that. One, we've learned that the state building code officials, enforcement officials do not enforce the Fair Housing Act. Is there something through this, the process of consolidated planning and related to this fair housing plan that will or could be implemented to ensure that state building code officials in our state and the tri-state area will enforce the Fair Housing Act accessibility standards and increase the number, the percentage of fully accessible units? And the second thing is that although I know you're going to put an emphasis on disability discrimination, which we applaud in terms of investigations and testing and spending money for that, will it include testing to ensure that the Fair Housing Act amendments, accessibility standards, and the building code standard for fully accessible type A units are met by developers and builders? Because if not, then we won't have accessible units. And the last thing is, usually the only place, one of the places that you can find affordable accessible units are in federally assisted properties and that have to comply with Section 504. But many of those properties and the senior developments use project-based vouchers. Should there not be a solution to the problem of if somebody is in a project-based unit and an accessible unit that with a developer that or a property manager that's using that will accept Section 8 vouchers, shouldn't there be a policy to transfer that project-based voucher to a tenant-based voucher to rectify the problem of people not being able to move once they move into a project that's into a development that's project-based? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Doris.
I'm sorry. I know I gave you a list, but these are things that actually that came to my mind based on the discussion here so far.
So I can at least talk to the type A units. Talking with the chief building official here in Arlington, they do monitor for that, and their staff is trained to look for that. I don't know if Diane has any insights on some of the other questions.
But
Yeah,
the building.
Go ahead. Well, I would say that people cannot break the law. So, I mean, part of our plan is a focus on education. It seems that we would need training for these building inspectors if they are not following laws, correct? So I know by having this emphasis on education, it seems to me, Joel, that we want to make sure that your agencies are trained on the Fair Housing Act as well.
I know Doris had a number of questions in there. Was there any other response to that, or? I
mean, I think we are looking at the Olmstead Act. That is one of our recommendations to have that state rental assistance program be adopted in Arlington through the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So that's something that's currently in the recommendations.
To be able to transfer a project, leave a project-based unit and automatically have to go on a waiting list for years for, you're stuck in the project-based unit because you can't get a tenant-based voucher.
Yeah, and I think that's, sorry, Doris, go ahead. Yeah, so I think, it's really exploring what that state rental assistance program will do for Arlington. And I think that's part of the discussion that they need to have. And I think they will involve you, Doris, in part of that discussion.
This might apply to other protected classes. I'm just not sure.
Thank you, Doris. It was like Mike Heminger. Oh, sorry, no. He's in the waiting room, and I confused that with someone raising their hand. Actually, I had a question that I wanted to ask. So one of Arlington's goals and strategies is to explore mechanisms to reduce county fees and costs for 100% affordable housing development. So this is something I know in the Housing Commission, we hear a lot about how long these site plan and development processes take, and that drives up a lot of costs. And there's a lot of hoops that the affordable housing developers have to jump through in order to get these units, ready for low-income residents to move into. So can you tell us more about this goal and what the county, might plan to do to help reduce the time it takes and the cost to build affordable units in Arlington?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something that we've been looking at for a number of years. And I think one of the issues, right, Kellen, is that it's expensive to create affordable housing. So I think the master plan objective, to produce and preserve a sufficient supply of affordable rental units to meet future needs is 8,650 committed affordable over like the next 19 years. So and I mentioned those costs of 85,000 to 112,000 a unit. So the estimated resources to fund the average annual funding for the production would be between 37 to 49 million annually. For reference, the average annual funding for the county loan fund is about 26.7 million now. So the county is really looking at any additional strategies that would reduce that cost of creating affordable housing, as well as I had mentioned, really looking at additional financing tools to meet the future anticipated need to affordable housing. So if there's creative ways to reduce those fees, as well as additional creative financing out there, it's really kind of what we're getting at with this recommendation.
Thank
And
you,
I
Jill.
want to add, and maybe it also addresses some of the question about the affordability of housing. So as challenging as Arlington is, I also worked in Santa Monica, where the average home price is over $1 million. And yet they have a fairly robust affordable housing program. And part of it is that they do have a streamlined permitting process for affordable housing. And they have lower fees than your market rate housing. They also have reduced parking requirements for affordable housing. And they have this fast track system where affordable housing can be approved, months earlier than your market rate housing. So that's sort of an incentive. Additionally, throughout the region, there are ways to reduce the cost of affordable housing, such as donation of land by the jurisdiction, which of course, if there's no land costs, then the housing will be less expensive. And there are, when we talk about this, we can't forget inclusionary zoning, where developers are permitted to build more units. Therefore, if they do set aside units for affordable housing, they'll still have more units that they are able to develop, thus lowering the cost of housing. So it sort of fits in both places.
Thank you, Diane. It looks like we have a question from Joan Sullivan. Joan asks, does the county know how diverse the builders, developers, and landlords are in the county? If limited in number, what is the county doing to encourage developers and businesses from diverse backgrounds to invest in/build in the county? Is this being considered as a means to encourage diversity in the county? Would this help in developing affordable housing?
Well, I'm going to try to respond to that. I think the development community, well, there are different size developers. So there are, major developers who do, 100 units, 200, 300 units at a time, or even more. And then there are smaller builders and developers who do smaller projects. I think there's a range there. I think in terms of the county's overall approach to equity and diversity, there may be, this may not be a thing that's specific to the housing division or CPHD. It may be an economic development department question. So I'm not aware of efforts that we make to cultivate diversity in the development field. So that may be something we need to take back and think about.
There are a number of new initiatives in that that enterprise and some of the banks like Wells Fargo, and whom you might say maybe cause some of these fair housing issues, are doing to promote African-American and Latino developers, including financing, which is a really big part of this. And there's some national efforts as well as local efforts to make sure that these developers have access to capital that they may not have had in the past.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I hope I don't misspeak. I'm not able to pull up the county's notice of funding availability, but we do publish a notice of funding availability for available funding for affordable housing development, and have recently updated it to include some information on just that, on diversity of staff and leadership in developers that are proposing to build affordable housing. So that's one way that we're starting to do that.
Thank you. And I know, Diane, you mentioned Wells Fargo, and that brought up to my understanding is that Arlington has a significant number of its money in Wells Fargo accounts. Is there any plan by the county that, and it's possible that staff you don't know, to not do business with a bank that's committed fraud at the scale that Wells Fargo has and committed the other bad things across this country? Do you know if that's something that the county manager is considering, or and as I said, this, goes beyond the scope of just housing. So it's very possible you don't know, but
It's way beyond our pay grade, but it's good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll add, I live in Baltimore, and Baltimore sued Wells Fargo and did get a settlement. So I think I'm not pro Wells Fargo or any bank for that matter, but they have taken steps to address some of their past wrongs.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, I think, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just had a quick question about the role that Richmond can play in helping stimulate development in the Northern Virginia area and DC, as well as Baltimore, Maryland. I know the focus of the study was specifically on how the Maryland, DC, and Virginia area could cooperate, but I'd like to know if there's any way for Richmond specifically to help, at least on the Virginia end, ameliorate some of the issues we've been seeing that you've identified in your study.
We had to be very careful because of Virginia laws, which aren't very friendly to individual jurisdictions. There have been some carve-outs like Arlington, where we've taken full advantage of things like using the word inclusionary, whereas we can't in a great deal of jurisdictions in Virginia, which has been challenging. So I would say that maybe now isn't the perfect time to introduce more progressive housing legislation like they are doing in Maryland. But hopefully that day will come where it will be more aligned with some of the policies that this region is implementing.
And just as a quick follow-up, can you give some examples of that progressive legislation that's being put forward in Maryland as perhaps a template for what we could see in Virginia?
Sure. I mean, one would be there are a number of proposed legislation. First of all, right to counsel passed last year, and there's funding behind it. So the entire state is now able to provide that right to counsel, although there's some funding challenges. At the moment, there is just cause eviction that's being introduced, which means that tenants can only be evicted for very specific reasons. They have to be offered new leases based on, except for this, certain conditions. So it allows tenants to remain in their homes. And there's also that we're arguing about terminology of rent stabilization versus rent control, but there will be some rent stabilization legislation introduced, and that will help cap the percentage that rent can be increased each year for tenants. So that's some example. If you want some really progressive legislation, there's always California, where we do a lot of work, which has, basically outlawed single family zoning and has done some really great, very progressive legislation around affordable housing development and tenant protections.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. And with that, we are at time for our panel. And I do want to thank Hilary, Diane, Joel, and Jennifer for being with us tonight. And Jennifer for addressing a lot of the questions in the comments with information that's helpful. I know Brian is going to close us out with information about how you all can provide public comment on the draft regional fair housing plan, as well as next steps for the NAACP. Brian?
Yep. All right, thank you so much. And let's have a virtual round of applause for our excellent panel, all the work they've done with this. It's been a long time coming, but this has been so informative for myself, and I hope all of you in learning more about what initiatives the region can take to advance fair housing and affordability. As was said at the beginning of the presentation, no one region can solve the issues caused by decades of systemic racism in our policies, but by engaging in initiatives like this, where we can understand the data and really bring to bear the collective force of the entire area, we can take a step in the right direction. The NAACP, as you know, has been involved in a number of housing initiatives spanning from missing middle to work with the county involving AHC properties and delving into a bit of the fair housing topics that we've discussed tonight. If you'd like to learn more, I'm going to link in the chat both information from the county regarding fair housing, as well as an embedded link to take a survey that will be extremely helpful so that COG can get the data they need moving forward for their project. So I've just linked that now. And additionally, there is a poll that I'd like for you all, if you have the time to take here, that I'm bringing up now. Go. So we have a quick poll with about 5 to 6 questions. If you'd be willing to submit your answers, we'll close it in about 30 seconds. Okay, we look like we're getting a nice trickle in of participation. We're nearly 100% participated. So give it a few more seconds for those who'd like to submit a response. And with that, we will end the first question. To our next question. And we'll do the same, give about a minute to submit your feedback. All right, we have nearly 100% participation in the second question. All right, about halfway done. Now we have question 3. We'll do another minute for those who put in their answers. Okay, second to last question. Okay, and here's the final question. And yes, once this final question is tabulated, I will review the results from all 5 questions. Okay, so that makes all of them. Now we can see the results of the first question. Is what/who are you representing? Are you an individual renter, individual homeowner, landlord, or property manager, a nonprofit government, or other? So the majority of individuals who attended were individual homeowners, followed secondly by individual renters, then nonprofits, and then government organizations. The second question. Answer was, what does fair housing or housing equity mean to you? This had the highest participation rate amongst all the questions. The highest individual response was people are not discriminated against because of any individual characteristic. Second highest response was everyone has equal access to the same housing opportunities. And lastly, reparations are made to people who have been systematically disadvantaged. To the third question, we have, do you think the overall goals of this plan will help to further fair housing or housing equity in the region? Majority of 87% respondents said yes. Question 4. We have, do you think the local goals will help to further fair housing and housing equity? Majority respondents at 90% said yes. And lastly, but not least, question 5, which asks, do you think the draft plan is comprehensive? If there are missing goals or strategies, please add in the chat or mute and share verbally. We saw that 61% of respondents said yes, but there were 36% that said no. And at this point, I would like to ask briefly if there are anybody who are willing to ask in either the chat or verbally what you think could have been added to this plan to make it more comprehensive. And see, we have one question here, one comment rather. Oh, sorry, correct, yeah, 36% said there are missing goals. Thank you for catching that. One comment said that I think that county monitoring is important, but saving expiring caps is going to take a bolder action and strong incentives, carrot and sticks, to bring private developers to the table? And briefly, if any of our earlier panelists could just speak briefly to that point, do you think there are some coercive or incentive mechanisms that could bring private developers to the table in the issue of saving expiring caps?
Sure, I can jump in. I think, you know, the beauty of that is that we are already a partner with these committed affordable units. They are nonprofit partners, so they're as Richard had mentioned earlier, their goal really is to preserve these as affordable. So they are going to continue to work with us to continue to have them be affordable. I think it's the issue is the remaining market affordable units where we really need to keep an eye on those and figure out a way to keep them affordable.
Okay, and just to clarify on that earlier question, the individual was referring to caps in private hands.
Yeah, so it's a minority, but we do monitor all our committed affordable agreements, and we do know when those affordability terms expire, and our development team works strongly with them to make sure or do everything reasonable to keep them affordable.
Okay, thank you so much. And with that, we will close out our event. Thank you so much.
It looks like Kathy had her hand raised.
Oh, yes, sorry, missed that. Please, Kathy. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. When I read this, I thought, well, it seems very comprehensive that you're looking at so many different areas, and you had gone through this process of the focus groups or whatever, the community engagement. And I thought all that was good, but what struck me, and it's because I've been involved in it, on page 2, I guess it is, that the options and programs for seniors to remain in place. That's it. That's never mentioned again in this. And my main concern is that whatever local programs there are, for example, in Arlington, we have a real estate tax relief program. But I question how much that has been part of a more holistic look at what are all the problems on housing in the county, what are the resources that have been dedicated to that over the years. And I particularly am concerned that when I was part of the study group, that most of the people who were getting the most subsidy when it comes to real estate tax were people who owned homes, not renters, homeowners in 22205 and 22207. Well, I would say that this program is not really meeting the greatest need. And maybe it's too much subsidy for people who, and I'm not sure how to address it. I know that there are other communities across the United States who use real estate tax freeze, so that when someone approaches the age of whatever you choose, 60, 65, they're not exempt from ever paying real estate taxes for the rest of their lives, or even their those who will inherit their home, which in Arlington is it's worth close to $1 million. So I really think there has to be a much wider conversation about that. And when we're talking about equity, it really shouldn't just respond to squeaky wheels. That's it.
And would any of our panelists like to speak to that?
I can speak to that. Boy, I would love it if I didn't have to pay real estate taxes at my age. It would be so fantastic. However, I think there have been discussion of, sort of as an anti-gentrification displacement policy to keep real estate taxes set at a certain level with only minor increases in gentrifying areas. That's something that could be explored because the prices have gone up so high, and it's really priced people out of their homes, including homeowners. I know we focus a lot on tenants in the plan because they're the lowest income people, and sort of the inclination is always to address like those that have so few housing options. But I know that there are studies about reducing taxes or putting a cap on taxes in gentrifying communities, as well as looking at, avoiding, having a freeze on taxes for people of a certain age.
Thanks.
I can just add
Yes,
that.
I see. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Jennifer, did you want to go? So I was just going to add that, Catherine, that it is one of our recommendations is to reevaluate the real estate tax relief program. I think it's one of those issues I think you brought up is really that deferral versus exemption, and what should that look like as far as asset limits or income limits, so that we're really serving the people or really helping the people that need it.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. And again, thank you to our wonderful panel for being able to share all of this knowledge and be able to go through a lot of the highlights of their plan and help explain it to the public. I know that I greatly benefited from it. So I appreciate all the work you've done, and we hope that you will be able to participate in the survey that was linked in the chat. It really is important in providing feedback, and we hope that you will continue in this conversation and be a part of the process so we can obtain both fair housing and affordable housing, not just in Northern Virginia, but across our Commonwealth. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.